Hey there, grade 5. Today we're just going to continue learning a bit about Columbus and, just his first voyage and some of the voyages afterwards. I kind of cut the video a bit short last time just because I thought it was going on too long, so we're just going to start here with the first voyage. So at the end of July 1492, after, having tried to go to the west for a long, long time, talking to the Portuguese and the Spanish, hanging around for quite a while, and then finally in 1492, since he had come there to Iberia in 1476, so he'd been at this for quite a while. He was finally ready to set sail west. He had 3 ships that were ready and standing by to set sail. And on August 3rd, 1492, he set sail for the Canary Islands, which had been contested by Portugal but remained a Castilian, now Spanish, outpost. By then, and then he set off to go west into the unknown with hopes of finding a western route to India. He arrived in the Caribbean on October 12th and proceeded to spend time exploring the area and found Cuba and Hispaniola. Columbus's first encounter with natives was he encountered them and he talked to them. He found that they had scars on them, and so he asked them some questions, and they kind of mentioned that there were some people on the mainland who came and captured them, and he thought, well, these people would probably make some good servants. He also thought about making them Christians as well. I'll learn from Columbus's story that he's kind of a bit of a got a multifaceted character is a nice way to put it. He's kind of got some troubled parts in him, but yeah, we'll see. So one of his ships ran aground on Christmas Day, and he decided to blow up the wreck to impress the native people. The local king there let Columbus leave some of his men behind on Hispaniola, so he founded a settlement called La Navidad. And then before heading back to Spain with the news, he went a little bit further and he made one last spot where he came across these people called the Chagollos tribe that were a bit more of a warlike tribe, and they ended up fighting with the Spanish a little bit, which ended up with 2 natives wounded. And yeah, I think one that's in Samaca Bay there, and you see the Golfo de las Flechas. That actually means the Bay of Arrows. And yeah, so he got kind of into a fight there with those people. And one guy ended up getting an arrow in the chest, and another guy got stabbed in the rear. So it was kind of a bit of a fight, not a big one. Nothing to make a video about. So then he went on his second voyage after that. So his second voyage was on September 1493, a few months later. And basically what happened this time was he was sent with a much bigger group, right? A larger contingent. After explaining what he'd found, the Spanish government gave him 17 ships and 1,200 men, or 1,200 men, with supplies to establish permanent colonies in America. They stopped again at the Canary Islands, so you'll see that the Canary Islands for Spain becomes sort of a stopping ground. And then he set off for America, stopping by the southern Caribbean islands. And you can see, if you compare it to here, where he came from the north, this time he came from the south, trying to get a different route. And now you have to bear in mind, a lot of the time what he's actually looking for is not necessarily to set up colonies here, which is part of it, but his big goal is to find a way to get to India, which he still hopes he can do at this point. So yeah, they took a different route, and they ended up finding these little islands, and they stopped on one of them and took a little bit of a look. But ultimately, they ended up going to the colony La Navidad on November 22nd, and they found that the fort that they had built was in ruins and destroyed, and that the Spaniards were gone. And it seems like the Spanish guys had gotten into a fight with the natives over some gold and some other things. And so the natives had fought with them. And obviously there was only like 30 Spanish people left there, so it didn't go well for the Spanish. So he established another little colony on this island of Hispaniola called Isabella. And this colony wasn't really well placed, and ultimately it ends up disappearing. Um, so yeah, and then for a couple months, he again went exploring, trying to find a way westwards, and just also figuring out what the land was like. So he also instituted. So then in his colony, then he returned, and at the end of the year, 2/3 of the settlers were dead, most from famine or disease. So Columbus also started to govern here, and his governorship was kind of characterized by cruelty and a bit too, heavy-handed. He started kind of a slavery system, but he executed many Spaniards as well, right? So he was kind of, some people say he was cruel towards the natives, but really he was kind of a tyrant in general when he ruled over all people, and his rule was categorized by like unusual cruelty. He would, if you stole something, he'd maybe take your ear off or your nose off, and even if it was just like a piece of corn. Now obviously we could talk about that, but he was doing cruel things. If anyone spoke against him, they got in a lot of trouble and maybe killed. So yeah, he was quite harsh, and people did start to complain. Now, I think one thing we want to consider is maybe the different leadership styles of being a ship captain versus a governor, and maybe Columbus wasn't necessarily made out to be a governor. To be a ship captain was kind of a hard job. You're with a lot of hardy men, and you had to be quite strong and tough to control your ship. And so maybe this led to him being a bit too harsh and tough when it came to being a governor. Now that's just conjecture. But anyways, after 2 years later, he returned to Spain. Then on his third voyage in 1498, which we'll put up here, he went even further south. Right, so he went even further south, and he left again for the Americas. And when he got to Hispaniola, he found that the colony that he had set up was in full rebellion against him. So they were not happy with him, and he ended up having to ask Spain and the Queen and King, or the King and Queen, to help govern. And the Spanish court had now heard some rumors about some bad things that Columbus had been doing over in the colonies, and so they sent a man to investigate. Ultimately, this ended up with Columbus and his brother being sent back to Spain in chains. They did manage to appeal this, and they got out of chains after around 6 weeks, but he was never allowed to be a governor again. So he was given he was given some ships to sail over again, but he was no longer a governor. He ended up exploring on his fourth voyage quite a bit. He did quite a lot of interesting things. He went along the coast of Central America, and he heard about a canal way that you could go through. Now today we have a full-blown canal that you can go all the way through. It's called the Panama Canal, and I guess some of the natives had already been using this, maybe with canoes or something, to cross over like an area that was very thin, and so he must have heard something about that. He also heard a lot of stories about gold, like big gold mines, and so he was very interested in finding that. So he spent a lot of time wandering around, meeting people, and then he went back towards Cuba after his little adventure, and he ended up getting stuck on Jamaica for about a year. And if you look here, you'll see the dotted line after Jamaica. His ship ran aground, and he got stuck here for a whole year. He sent a guy across on a little rowboat who did get there, but the governor of San Domingo, which was set up as an actual major colony, and that's why we have the Dominican Republic today in there, and that's so this place ultimately would become a big city, or a city. So he sent someone to go and get help, but the governor there really didn't like him, and so they decided not to help him right away, and he was stuck on this island for a year. He did make friends with the natives because he had an astrological chart, and he was able to predict a solar or a lunar eclipse, which really impressed the natives, and so they liked him and kept him and fed him. So that was, I guess, good for him. Ultimately, he just went back to Spain, and he and his descendants, he was promised originally to get 10% of all profits made in America, but the Spanish government decided that because he wasn't governor anymore, they didn't owe this to him, and him and his descendants kind of sued the Spanish government for about 40 years, but nothing really came out of it. But yes, so this is kind of just the little voyages of Christopher Columbus. Hope you enjoyed.